Love to see where people are. My name is Sabrina Baker. I am the CEO and founder of Acacia HR Solutions. We are a small employer-focused fractional HR support firm. And what that means is that we work with businesses in the 1 to 500 range, 1 to 500 employees. I don't care about revenue. I don't care about industry. I don't care about location. We work globally. As long as you have 1 to 500 employees, you are considered a small employer to us, and that is where we focus. We offer fractional support services, and what that means is that we can be your entire human resources team. We can be a supplement to your human resources team, or we can handle one-off projects that you may have just to get you through a little bit of a business spike. And so I am excited you're here today, excited to talk about what good HR looks like inside of a small employer. And think that there's going to be hopefully some good information for you to be able to think through whether you are managing HR in a small employer or whether you are leading a small employer, whether you have a small business, a small employer, and you are a leader within it. Hopefully something here resonates from you. Love to see San Pedro, Kansas City. I don't know that I've ever heard it called Cowtown, but that's cool. Rockland, California, wrapping up some offers. Yep, we love to hear that. So I wanted to talk about a couple different things today. What does good HR look like in a small employer? Why do I even think that we have to call out the small employer space? And why do I think that that's different? But certainly want this to be interactive. So as we go throughout this live stream, if you have questions, if you have thoughts, if you have ideas, I certainly would never be arrogant enough to think I have all the answers. So if you have your own tips or ideas to share, would love to hear from you. You can just drop those in the comments anytime. It won't distract me. We'll be able to, I'll make sure that I share that with the larger group. So let's talk about small employer and why we carve that out. Why is that our niche inside the business? Why do I think that there needs to be content and discussion specifically around a small employer? So again, anything in that 1 to 500 employee range is what I call a small employer. I don't care what revenue is. I don't care what industry. I don't care location, but it's in that 1 to 500 employee range. And the reason that we call that out and the reason that I have focused the business in that 1 to 500 is because it is different. It is a different space when you are managing human resources in that group than it is in a much larger organization. If you think about the nuance, the types of roles that you can have in a 1 to 500 who are managing HR, it's all over the map. You can have an HR department of one person handling all of it. You can have a small HR team. So as you get into the 200, 300, 400 employee range, you might have a manager, director, you could have a recruiter, generalist, specialist sort of situation, or maybe just an admin, but you're going to have maybe a very, very small HR team. But even in multiple businesses that could be above that 200, that small HR team could look different. In the super smalls, you may have no HR. You could have Danny from marketing, who that one time put together that really good employee event. And so now all of a sudden he gets to do HR too. You could have just the CEO kind of winging HR and just trying to figure it out. So the nuance of who's managing HR between a 1 to 500 is so vastly different. Above 500, once you hit 500 and above, you start to see more structure. You start to see more similarity in what HR teams look like. You start to see HR professionals who have been doing this as a career in all of the HR roles. Under 500, it's kind of the wild, wild west. It's all over the map. Anybody can be handling HR or no one can. The other reason we carve that out is because how you manage HR is different in a 1 to 500. In that size, and again, especially in your super small, so in your 100 or less, you are like living in a small town. It's really the same as living in a small town. Everybody knows everybody. Most people are related. The same person who checks your bags also flies the plane and takes you through security. And, we wear many hats. And so managing human resources in an environment where one small event can have a huge impact, positively or negatively, on the entire organization, that's different HR. That's managing different than it is in a much, much larger organization. So that's why we carve out small employer. It's why I niched down to that when I first started the business. I came from big business and I thought that I was just going to be able to take all my HR knowledge and scale it down. And that was so wrong. It was so very wrong. And I've really had to, over the last 14 years, learn how do you manage in a small environment? What are the differences? What are the nuances in managing people operations in a company that may only have 12 people or may have 200 people? What does that look like? It's very different. So that's why we carve out small employer. That's why all of our content is based around small employers. Every piece of advice we give, every tip, every trick, every discussion we have about things we're doing inside of our client operations, it is all focused in that small employer space. So if you are doing that, if you are managing HR in a small employer, you're not going to hear things from us that are heavily resourced, heavily budgeted, because we know that that's not the reality of what you're managing in, and that a lot of times you're probably doing it by yourself and just trying to do your best and manage all the things, being everything to everybody. So that's kind of the carve out and why I think that it is unique and why I think it's different. Before I launch into the good employer stuff, I did want to mention that we do have a podcast all centered around this, launching next week. I so hope that you will listen. It's called the HR Connection, and we deliberately chose that name because people who are managing HR inside of small orgs often have a hard time finding connections with other people. When I started the business and thought again that I was just going to take all that big business knowledge and dial it down and realize I couldn't do that, I started trying to find people who were managing HR in a small environment. I started to try to find content driven that way, and I couldn't find the group. I couldn't find the content. I was going to conferences. I was reading blogs, listening to podcasts, doing whatever I could do. And everything was geared towards big business. Everything was geared towards large HR budgets, lots of HR resources. And that just doesn't work in a 1 to 500. And so we are launching the HR Connection to hopefully be that connection for those people managing HR in a small space, so that they can feel seen and heard, and again, get ideas and advice from people who are also doing the work in a similar environment, because I think that that's where the value is. So launching next week, I hope that you will subscribe. Okay, let's jump into what good HR looks like inside of a small employer. I have six things that I think make up good HR. I'm going to share 4 today for the sake of time. There is a podcast episode. I think it's episode 3, maybe. If you want to hear the other 2, you'll have to take a listen to that when it launches in a couple of weeks. But I want to share 4 today. Certainly, if you have ideas, if you have thoughts, drop them in the comments, so that we can all share together. Hello, Peter. Glad you're here. Glad everybody's here. Let's talk about good HR in a small employer. So the first piece of advice I give to anybody who is thinking about going into an HR role in a small employer, or when I have potential clients come to me and talk to me about us maybe working with them, is we talk about how they think about HR. Because good HR inside of a small employer is seen as a strategic partner. It is seen as a strategic driver of the business. And so you want leaders who see HR not just as admin, not just as compliance, not just as a check the box activity to be able to make sure you're legal. I would say many roles could do that. Lots of places could make sure that you're legal. We want to have, in a small space, human resources be a strategic driver of the business. There are 3 components of HR: HR strategy, HR infrastructure, HR compliance. I always say that HR strategy informs HR infrastructure, and then HR infrastructure builds on compliance. While that compliance piece, of course, is important, we want you to be legal. We want you to make sure you're doing everything that you should be to not have a wage and hour issue or a lawsuit. Of course, that is important. In a small environment where small things can have big impacts, that infrastructure and that strategy, so much more important. Actually getting somebody legal is the easy part, right? Figuring out the compliance piece, especially if you're super small, is actually the easier part. Building the infrastructure, building the workflows, building the processes that is going to help drive business, that's the more difficult piece of it. And you want, inside of a small employer, especially, you want HR to be seen as a strategic driver of that business. Now, if you are listening and you're managing HR in a small space, I can almost hear you saying, yeah, that'd be great, but they don't see me that way. And I know that that's true. I know that a lot of times I will have potential clients come to me, and when I talk to them about how they see HR, they're really just worried about the compliance. And it takes me time to educate them on all the other things I can do. Sure, I can process your payroll and we can process it really well, but I can also help you meet your goals. I can also look at your revenue targets, your customer service, product launch, whatever your targets are, whatever your goals are. I can also look at those things and say, here are the levers we pull from a people process standpoint to get you there. And oh, by the way, I can also scale that for you. So if your goal is to go from 100 employees to 300, we can build processes to help you get there. And so when you have leaders who see you as a strategic partner and allow you to act as such, then HR can have such a huge impact on the business. If you don't have leaders who see that, if you don't have leaders who maybe they've never just worked with good HR, or they've never seen HR as a strategic driver, or HR is not a priority. We have a lot of clients who come to us, there's 75, 100 employees, they've never had HR. HR just hasn't been a priority until it blows up in their face a little bit. And now it's a priority. If you are sitting in that space and you're saying, I'd love to be a strategic partner, but they don't let me, there are things I think you can do to change that mindset. I don't always think that it's just the leaders discounting HR intentionally. I think they just never seen really what good HR looks like. So we want HR in a small environment to be a strategic driver, to be a business partner, to be able to think about the HR goal or the business goals that the company has, what they're trying to scale to, what they're trying to do, and make sure that we're not just focused on compliance, but that we are looking at strategy and infrastructure and saying, what all three of those boxes do we need to fill in to make sure that we are actually aligned and helping drive business through people processes. The second component of really good HR inside of a small business is aligning HR goals with business goals. And I love small businesses for a number of reasons. I love working inside of a small employer for a number of reasons. And part of it is because we do get the opportunity to do this. We can be really creative in how we build infrastructure, process, workflow, strategy that align with what the business is trying to do. And so when we are coming in, especially if you're coming in, maybe you're the first HR person, or maybe you've been around for a while, you're an HR department of one, and you're trying to think about what your HR goals should be for the year, they really should align with the business goals. They really should connect with whatever it is that the business is trying to drive. And so sitting down with your leaders and talking about what are our goals? What are we trying to drive to? Where are we short right now? And what is it we're going to need to do to get us to make sure that we are meeting those goals? If you think about how small employers are built, how small businesses are built, they're built on the backs of all of the people. And while certainly that's true of any business, it's really felt that the impact is high in a small employer. And so when you think about your people processes, your people strategy, the goals that you're trying to achieve as an HR person in a small employer, they have to align with the business goals. That is one way you get them to see you as a business partner, but also it just means that the business is going to grow and thrive, and not only for the business, but for the people inside of it as well. So I always suggest that HR individuals inside of small employers sit down with their business leaders. That could be your CEO. Maybe they're the only person in the C-suite, or maybe it's all of your C-suite. And ask them, what goals are they trying to achieve? What's keeping them up at night? Like, what is it that they feel like where is their opportunity? Where is their gaps that could be filled in? And then asking them this question: how do you see HR helping you with that? How do you see HR contributing to that goal? That tells you a couple different things. It tells you first how they see you, how they see HR, because if they hadn't thought about it, then maybe we're not as present as a business partner as we'd like to be. but also it can give you great insight into whether the strategic goals you have actually align with what they're looking at. And we want that alignment. So when we think about HR as a business partner, the biggest part of that is making sure that the goals we're working on, whatever it is we're putting in place, aligns with what the actual business is trying to do. I will have HR practitioners come to me quite a bit and say, I can never get my leaders to approve certain initiatives. They're just not on board with doing X or Y. And I will say, well, what does doing X or Y help the business do? How does that align with the goals that the business is trying to achieve? And they often can't tell me. They don't know. It's just X and Y, whatever it is they're trying to do, feels like the right thing to do. Or they read that some other company was doing it, and it feels like maybe that's something they'd like to do inside their organization. But if it doesn't align with the business goals that your business has, then it could be a waste of time. It might not be, you're maybe never going to get it approved because the leaders can't make that connection. They can't understand how doing that thing you want to do connects them to the larger goals that they have. So making sure that your HR goals align with business strategy, align with business goals, super important. I want to say one more piece about that, and this is true actually for any of these things, is that it also has to scale. If you are in a growing business and you know that the organization has plans to go from 20 employees to 75 in the next 2 years, then your strategy, the infrastructure that you're building, the goals that you have need to not only be good for now, but they need to also scale up. There are a lot of times we come into new clients and they have bonus programs in place, they have benefits in place, they have perks, things that they have offered that made sense when they were 20 people. But now that there's 75, 80, 100, they can't sustain that either from a budget perspective or just a process perspective. They can't sustain what it is that they put in place. So as part of working in sync with the business is making sure that you're thinking about not just today, not just what makes sense now, but what is going to scale as we grow or decline or whatever it is, as we expand into new states, as we, maybe think about our strategic positioning in the market, whatever it is. What's good for today, but then what do I know about our growth potential? What do I know about the things that we may want to do? And how do I make sure that those things that I'm suggesting, those things that I'm offering up are also things that are going to scale with the organization? So the first component of good HR is that it is seen as a business partner. If you are a leader, please, if you're a leader in a small employer and you don't see HR as a business partner, you might want to think about that. Go talk to your HR person, see how you could work better with them. If you are in HR yourself and you don't feel like you are seen as a business partner, there are things I think you can do to change that. That is one of our podcast episodes coming up, but there are a few things that I think you can do to potentially shift that narrative in your business. Takes time. It's not an overnight silver bullet sort of thing, but there are things that I think you can do to show up a little bit differently and change that. And then the second component is seeing HR as, or aligning and making sure that you are aligning your HR goals, the things that you're wanting to do from an HR perspective, aligning those with the business and making sure that they scale along with whatever it is that the business is trying to do. If you think about small employers and think about the space that your small employer is in, they are either maybe a startup, really small, trying to get to profitability. That is the only priority. So all goals should align with how do we get to profitability. If they are a little bit larger, they're a little bit more established, maybe they're already in the black, they're already to profitability, then the goal could be how do we gain market share? How do we get more market share? All of your HR goals should align with that. As you get larger, as you get more stable, then of course the goals change. And it could be how do we scale up? How do we expand? How do we move from a small business to a mid-market? Whatever it is, you really should understand that the same way that the other business leaders in your organization do. And then think about how all of the things that you're working on, the processes, the workflows, the offerings, the perks, the total rewards, all of that really help the business achieve those goals. I'm just going to take a break. Hello and Elgin, DJ, Beatrice. Love all of you guys for being here. I really appreciate it. All right. Number three, the number three thing that I think makes really good HR inside of a small employer, and my team and I were just talking about this morning, is personalization. As I mentioned in the beginning, I think that working in a small employer is similar to working or living in a small town. Everybody kind of knows everybody. They're kind of sort of related in some weird way. You've got people wearing many hats. The mayor is also the pastor and the dog walker and whatever. And so it's very, very different than a much larger city or a much larger organization where everybody's just kind of lost in the crowd. And that allows you in a small environment to personalize the offerings, personalize not only the way you deliver HR, but personalize the things that are built inside of HR infrastructure or the way that you go about that strategy. When you have 30 employees, it's really easy to get to know each and every one of them, understand their personalities, understand the way that they like to work and the way that they like to communicate and what motivates them, what demotivates them. It's really easy to understand that of the entire organization when you're small. Even I would say in the 100 range, 200 range, certainly it gets harder as you get larger, but even in the 200 range, if you have got 2 or 3 HR people, it's easy to know all of the employees and to know about their lives and to know about how they like to work and what their goals are and what their motivations are. And when you are then putting in place strategy to build and scale the company, you can think about programs that meet those personalities. We were talking about this morning around total rewards. A business partner of mine had shared an article in our chat about total rewards and thinking about all of the different benefits and perks that organizations can offer. Certainly, traditionally, we think about the most standard. We think about medical and dental and vision, and we think about bonuses, either discretionary or performance-based. We think about maybe a few other perks that are traditionally offered, like gym memberships, or just things that you would have pretty consistently, traditionally, in much larger orgs. In a small environment, I don't think you have to go that route at all. I think that you can really think about what is going to best fit the employees that we have. And when you only have so many, you really can understand them at a level that allows you to offer a suite of benefits, a suite of perks and rewards that fits their unique needs. That's not saying like individually, I'm not suggesting that we go and offer 20 different types of benefits to meet 20 different types of employees' needs. But I am saying that as a group, we can look collectively at what is best and be really creative with that offering. An example that I always give in our own business, I talk about this to my team, and I talk about it, we'll talk about it on the podcast, is we don't offer traditional benefits inside of our organization. We are a small team of 8 employees, and half of them don't need the benefits. They have that available to them elsewhere, so they wouldn't have partaken anyway, which meant that the benefits that I could have offered would have been really bad. They wouldn't have been great. They would have been really expensive. And so I sat and thought for a while about what could we do? What could we offer that would be beneficial to all employees? Because I wanted to do something, but I needed it to make sense for the budget and the resources that we have and the employees that we have. And so we offer something else that is a reimbursement situation where everybody can partake, everybody can participate in it, whether they have benefits or not. And so in a small environment, you get to be a little bit creative and you get to personalize and make sure that you really are offering things that fit your entire audience. And whether that audience be 20 people or 200 people, you can personalize a lot better than you can when there's 5,000, 10,000, 20,000 employees. So getting to know your employees, making sure that you are doing engagement surveys. I always say you can do an engagement survey even if you have five employees. It wouldn't be a survey then. It would be more of a focus group, skip levels, meetings, things like that. But making sure that you are kind of keeping a pulse on your employees, getting to know them, encouraging your leaders to do that at a motivation level, what's important to them, what helps them feel like they can show up as their best self, and then what support systems do we need in place to help with that? And that comes in the form of your entire HR infrastructure, meaning what internal workflows and processes and policies do we need to build to make sure that we are helping them thrive in that way? But then what are our offerings? What are we offering them as far as benefits, as far as perks and flexibility and just all of the different things that we could potentially present to them? Let's make sure we're doing that in a way that feels personal to them. One of the hardest things to do in a small environment is hire well, hire people who are going to work through the ambiguity that you can have in a small environment, work through the wearing of the many hats, work through the stress levels that come, especially if you are in a small space that's it's a startup or a series funded, you're trying to get to that profitability piece, then that's a very stressful place. And when you can then offer personalized anything, even just personalized communication, it's as simple as that, to employees on a wider scale, they're going to feel way more engaged. They're going to feel way more special and be more willing to maybe work through some of those more stressful times because they feel like an individual. They feel like they are seen and heard as an individual. And I think that we have a really cool and unique opportunity to do that in a small employer than we do in some of the much larger counterparts. I'd love to hear if you have any thoughts on that. Some of you I know here are working in a small environment. Some of you are HR departments of one or part of a very small team, or you are like in finance, just kind of shackled with HR. So would love to know if you have any thoughts on that piece. But I think the personalization piece is very unique to small employers. I think it's very cool. And I think as an HR practitioner, it allows me to be creative. It allows me to think outside the box, which is really fun. And then when you do put something in place that employees feel like, oh, wow, they really saw us, they really heard us, they really adapted this to what works best for us, then you can really see the whole group thrive. And that's super rewarding. All right, I have one more thing for this live stream that I think makes good HR in a small environment. And this is kind of a very tactical thing, but it is that the person managing HR does have to be an HR generalist at heart. They have to be someone who is willing to think like a team of one, act like a team of one, know a little bit about everything. I think there are 9 disciplines of HR, if I'm remembering correctly, if we think about all the way from hiring, recruiting, onboarding, performance management, benefits. If we go through all of the different components of HR, I want to say there's 9. I could be making that number up, but I feel like there's 9. It is impossible to be an expert in all of those. Like it's just an absolute impossibility to think that any person is going to be an expert in all of those areas. But when you are in a small space, you do have to know enough about all of them to be able to get through. You have to know enough to know where to go look for more resources, what to be able to understand about each of the things that you're trying to put into place, where to get data, what kind of data is important for your business. And so it's hard, I think, for someone who has been in a specialist role. Maybe they've only been a recruiter, or they've only focused on benefits, or they've only focused on leaves. I think it can be really difficult for that person to come into a small environment if they don't have that support system around them. And by the way, just sidebar, I would say this is true for a lot of areas in a small environment. It can certainly happen in finance. It can happen in marketing. It can happen in a lot of your ancillary departments where you have these teams of one, and they have to, for that small employer, do all of the things under that title, whether it be marketing or HR. And so they need to know a little bit enough about all of the different disciplines to be able to execute well. It's very, very hard, I know, and it can be very stressful trying to manage all of that in a department of one situation. But it's important that we know enough. I make the joke to my team all the time. I hate benefits. They know this. They're probably watching, going like, we know what she's going to say. I hate benefits with a passion. I'm no good at them. I don't want anything to do with them. But I was by myself in this business for a while and I had to muddle through. I had to figure it out. I had to make sure that I was making good connections with brokers and people that could help me kind of supplement the knowledge that I didn't have or the desire that I did not have. When I made a hire, I made sure that I hired somebody who was really good in benefits. And now I don't have to think about it because I can just resort to her and make sure that she's taking care of it. But you have to know enough, even though I don't like them, even though I don't want to have to ever deal with them. I know enough to get by. I know enough to know how to ask the right questions or to go find the resources that I need, to go find the help that I need to fill in whatever gaps of knowledge that I have. I don't think HR departments of one can be everything to everybody. I know that we often feel like we have to be, and I don't think that we can be. I think it's okay for us to say, you know what, I know this much, but there's more research that I need to do on this. Let me go figure that out for you. But we have to have at least a base level of knowledge about everything to even know where to go. So if you are in a small setting and you don't know anything about compensation, you don't know anything about benefits, nothing about leave of absence, wherever that gap is, I think it's important that you go and figure out, how do I listen to some webinars? How do I take a course? How do I do some certifications? How do I do something to at least get a base level of knowledge? There's a ton of great stuff out on the internet. You can find anything you want available. But if you don't have at least a base knowledge, then you're probably not going to be able to muddle through what is right, what is wrong, or to even be able to ask the right questions to say, okay, this is the right information that I need for my organization. So I do think that even if you are a part of a small team, so if you think about the larger of our 1 to 500, if you're in a 300, 400, 500 employee population, even if you have a team of 2 or 3, it's probably not enough to have enough experts in every area. So even that team of 2 or 3 needs to be a generalist in a lot of different areas. You just have to have a baseline of knowledge in a lot of different space. So if you're listening and you are a leader inside of a small org and you are thinking about adding HR, or maybe you've got somebody who's not an HR person managing HR, you want to make sure that you are supporting them to get at least a baseline level of knowledge around the areas of HR. If you are managing HR in a small environment and you are a team of 1 or a small team and you feel like there are knowledge gaps where nobody knows anything about a certain aspect of HR, then you're going to definitely want to make sure you are doing whatever you can, put plans in place to fill in those gaps and make sure that people are getting at least, again, that baseline level of knowledge to be able to manage through all of the things that you're going to be asked to do in a small employer when you are doing it all alone. So those are my 4 things. Just recap: HR is a business driver. It should be seen as a strategic partner. It should act as a strategic partner. One of the ways that it does that is by aligning business goals with HR goals, making sure that we have that alignment, and that whatever we are doing from an HR standpoint, whether we're putting in strategy, infrastructure, working on compliance, we want to make sure that it's aligning with where the business is now and where it wants to scale to in the future. And then number 3 is that personalization. We have that unique opportunity inside of a small space, which I think is really cool, to personalize the things that we're doing. One of the things that was fun for me when I started the business was I kind of got to unlearn everything that I had done in big business. We had done all of these things in my corporate career because that's the way you do HR. And then when I moved to small spaces, everybody was like, why do we do it that way? And I was sat there thinking, I don't know why we do it that way. And I had to really question everything that I was doing and unlearn it and get really creative in how I was doing it and making sure that it really fit the employees and the leaders and the business that I was working with. And so that personalization piece, I think, allows us to be very creative. We don't always get that opportunity in HR to be creative. And I think having that personalization piece allows us to get way more creative. And then the last one was being a generalist. That's that kind of tactical, like, what skills and knowledge do we need to have really good HR inside of a small employer? And I do think that while you cannot be an expert and should not be expected to be an expert in every area, you do have to have enough knowledge to be able to understand a baseline and then know where to go to get the resources that you need to fill in your gaps and to be able to discern in your research what is true and valid and what is not so much, because there's obviously so much information out there. So that's my 4 things. Again, there are 6, and I shared the other 2 in a podcast episode that'll be releasing. Would love to take a few minutes here, maybe 5 minutes, if you have any questions, if you have any thoughts. Would love to hear any ideas or suggestions that you have on what you think makes good HR inside of a small employer. So I'll shut up and see if we have any questions pop up. And if not, then we can certainly be done. While you're thinking about that, again, just wanted to remind you that the HR Connection podcast is launching next week. So May 19th, we will have 3 episodes. We have done both video and audio, so you can watch on YouTube. You can watch the videos if you wanted to watch them live and have the video. Just this whole setup right here is the exact same setup for the podcast. If not, you can certainly listen on your podcasting platform. Either way, it's the same material, but that is launching with 3 episodes next week. And then we will have a episode every week after that for 10 to 15 weeks here through the summer. So all right, I think we're going to end it there. I appreciate all of you for being here today. I hope this was helpful, and I certainly hope that you will tune in to future lives or the podcast. If we're not connected on LinkedIn, I would love to connect with you, and I hope you all have a great day. Thank you.